As I stand before you all today, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we all have a unique story to tell. Our experiences and our circumstances shape who we are, but more importantly, shape our futures. And while I don't know you all's stories, I look forward to sharing a piece of mine with you as I aim to draw attention between the endless power and potential that we all have despite our circumstances or the things that we've been through. One of the things that aided in the discovery of my own was growing up with a parent in prison. At a young age, I became a part of an almost voiceless community, one that rarely spoke about our circumstances for fear of judgment, of feeling ashamed, and because we didn't want to be looked at as at-risk youth. We lacked the proper resources to come together, to heal, to talk about what it was like growing up with an absent parent, or even what it was like being exposed to the criminal justice system at a young age. Although we lacked the resources, I found the one thing that didn't lack was the number of us who were affected by the same circumstances. In 6th grade, I was pulled out of class by a man I had never met before. He was dressed really nicely, and I noticed he had a badge that read the county that I went to school in. He introduced himself to me and began to ask me a series of questions. These were questions that I thought he should have already known the answer to, like my age, my parents' names, my address, and so forth. But the last question he intended to ask me is what made this conversation stick. He asked, "Do you have a parent that's incarcerated?" And I responded really quickly and very confidently. And I said, "No, both of my parents are alive." I could tell that he wanted to laugh, but he didn't. At 11 years old, my vocabulary was not that broad, and incarceration sounded a lot like death. Where I come from, we would say that someone was locked up or doing time. At the moment, I think he realized he was speaking to an 11-year-old child, and he began breaking things down in terms that he knew I would understand, so he asked again, "Do you have a parent that's in prison?" "Oh yeah," I responded. It was right before my 6th grade year of school began. Although my dad was in and out of prison for most of my childhood, he was sentenced to 7 years, which he would carry out through all of my middle and high school years. So I told him, yes, I do have a parent that's incarcerated. But I wanted to know why he wanted to know this. Wouldn't this be something that the county already knew if they were gathering this data? And as our conversation came to a close, he let me know that the county I lived in was gathering statistics on students with incarcerated parents in my grade so they could later gather more data down the line to see if we repeated the cycle of going to jail as well. And that didn't sit well with me. I didn't know why in the moment he made us statistics, why it was going to be easy for us to also end up in the system. I didn't get it, and I took it how he said it, and I felt I was made a statistic in that moment. Like I would have to begin proving myself to a world and to a system that I already felt was not supportive. It is no secret that the United States of America has the highest mass incarceration rate in the world. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, there are currently 2.3 million people occupying our prisons and jails, and that doesn't account for everybody that has. But the number I was truly interested in was how many of my peers were pulled out of class or made to be this statistic to repeat this cycle of intergenerational incarceration. And the number I came across was very surprising to me. 1 in 14 adolescents have had a parent incarcerated at some point in their youth. 1 in 14 adolescents in the United States of America have had a parent incarcerated at some point during their youth. And I didn't like this, because in the community that I grew up in, that 1 in 14 number was a lot more slim. It was more like 1 in 10 of us who had parents who were incarcerated, because we were more affected than our peers who lived in more suburban areas. This didn't sit well with me, and if we look at the overarching number, we will see that that's 5 million children in the United States of America who have at some point during their youth have had to grow up with an absent parent. I found that there is a long-standing debate amongst researchers about how many exactly repeat the cycle of intergenerational incarceration. But I also found that a study done by Central Connecticut State University states that children of the incarcerated are 3 times more likely than their peers to end up criminal justice involved. 3 times more likely. But as I grew up and I looked at myself and my peers, I didn't see the potential that we had to do all these negative things, to repeat these cycles. I saw the potential we had to do great things, to defy limitations, to break down barriers and build bridges. I saw our potential, but more importantly, I saw our power. And because I was able to gain this perspective rather quickly, I was able to take my potential and turn it into action and begin living intentionally. I kept the statistic in mind. I kept that conversation in mind, and I still do today. Because the truth is, it would have been very easy to repeat that cycle. Based on the environment I grew up in and the people I grew up around, it wouldn't have been hard to also end up behind bars. But I didn't want anybody writing my story for me. I learned really quickly that I had the opportunity to take control of my life and take my power back from a system that will do its best to write people off based on their circumstances. I learned that through having a parent in prison, that we all have to stand up on behalf of underserved communities and people who live in undesirable circumstances. We have to use our voice to advocate on behalf of the voiceless. I was able to do this by locking myself in my room at a young age and writing and figuring out how I could use my voice as a power. I did this through poetry, through mentorship, and eventually by creating my own organization so people could utilize their voice in the way that they saw best to tell their own stories. You and I, we have to stand up for voiceless communities. We have to take into account all of the things that make us who we are and build these bridges and create these resources. I believe that as we grow and we understand our own power, we have to lift as we climb. We have to empower other people to tap into their potential, and instead of telling them the negative that can come from their circumstances, we need to be bringing bravery down their spine. We need to be telling them all of the positive things that they can do. We need to be letting them know that your circumstances don't define where you're going to go. They're only a stepping stone to get you there. I believe that as a community, we have to look at each other and look at ourselves and let each other know what we can utilize to tap into those things. We should be writing, teaching, speaking, creating resources, but more importantly, being a resource to other people. Because when we know our power, it is up to us to sprinkle a little bit in spaces where people have been stripped of theirs, where I felt I was stripped of mine growing up and where countless people do today. My progression from feeling shame and powerlessness to where I am right now is only the beginning of my journey. My next part of my journey is to urge other people to do the same, to utilize your voice for the benefit of others, because we live in a system and in a world that requires that we do that. We live in a system and in a world that won't do it for you, so you have to do it for yourself and other people. I believe, and I'm going to reiterate, that we have to lift as we climb, because when we know our own power, it is up to us to sprinkle a little bit in places where people have been stripped of theirs. Thank you.